Hello everybody, today I'm going to take you through a tour of my bookshelves. There's some behind you that you can't see. And yeah, I'm just going to talk through the layout and some of my favourite recommendations. And obviously, we could be here all day, so I'm going to limit myself to one recommendation per shelf. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to stand off to the side to talk about this one because it looks stupid me here. So, I'm going to start with this top shelf. I recently put this Lego castle, I love this set a lot, so I put it up here, all spread out. I have some hats that mean a lot to me. This Waves hat I got signed at a concert of theirs. This hat was my grandfather's. This one is from the Lunar Circus Festival that I went to earlier this year. This is just also another Lego set that I think looks nice at the top of the shelf. I don't like having books up here because they just fall off, and I like having this stuff at the top, the globe. I have another one, smaller one over there that I'll show you later. I think it just looks cool. This is my first shelf of my fiction books. I've alphabetized all of them and fitted them on this shelf here. I find when I alphabetize them, they look really nice, just in a natural sort of order. What book would I recommend off this one? Well, I'm currently reading Piranesi, and it is I don't want to say difficult book to read, but it is definitely an intriguing book to read. It took me a couple of goes to get into it. Sherlock Holmes. I picked up this Sherlock Holmes book because I had a gift voucher for a bookstore, and I thought it was just beautiful. And I thought it was going to be unreadable. It was going to be in ye olde English, but it was actually really interesting because whilst reading it, you sort of got into the old style of language, and the stories are really enjoyable and fun. I'm a big fan of comedy sci-fi, so The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is like the basic comedy sci-fi book, and this is a collection of the Trilogy of Four, as it is known. I love going to secondhand bookstores, and when I went to one that I hadn't been to before, and went to their Dan Brown section, I found this for, I think it was $10-15. This first edition Da Vinci Code, worth about $100 or so. I haven't actually read the Da Vinci Code, but it is a really nice addition in my collection. I think the spine looks really nice, and yeah, it's nice to have a cool first edition like that. I want to shout out these two books. They are self-published books from a booktuber I really like called Daniel Green. I read through them really quickly, and yeah, cannot wait for the third one to come out. Now, I have worked very hard for a long time to get my favourite authors collection all onto one set of shelves, and I have finally done something that looks really nice in my opinion. So my favourite author is, obviously, from the amount of books of his, Stephen King. This is like a third of all my Stephen King books. I'll show you the rest later. What would I recommend from this shelf particularly? I have read, on this shelf alone, Sounds Like the Shining, The Eyes of the Dragon, It, and Joyland. I'm currently reading 11/22/63. And out of the ones I've read, my favourite has definitely been It. I like this copy because it has a nice spine. I'm generally not too fond of Nonfiction reprint covers, but I think this one is actually really well done. This book is like known to be massive, and the pages in this version are like Bible thin. It is over 1100 pages long, so that is an issue for a lot of people. It took me about 11 weeks to read, so I got through it about 100 pages a week, which is a nice pace for me. To get into Stephen King, I would definitely recommend The Shining. I know a lot of people do. It is just, its reputation precedes it. It's terrifying, it's compelling, it's mysterious. Yeah, it's iconic terror. On this shelf, I have some of my large print editions, this copy of On Writing by Stephen King, and the rest of my paperbacks because they didn't all fit onto that shelf. I'm classing it as its own shelf because of the petition. Out of this section, I would definitely recommend The Institute. This book reminded me a lot of Stranger Things. This book reminded me of Stranger Things in the way that it is about magical children and an institute, and is about an institute that is like trying to control these magical children, and it is characters, they're really compelling, and what happens, I mean, whenever you torture a character, it makes them more endearing, but the characters in this are all like 11 years old, and you really grow to care for them and root for them, and it is a thriller, especially in the last act. Give the Institute a go. This is also a really nice way to get into King, one of his more recent books, so there are some more modern references than you'll find in some of his older books. You know those beautiful moments in life where everything just aligns perfectly? Well, one of those is my Dark Tower series fitting right into the bookshelf perfectly, just like that. It's still in its box because it just makes it fit a little bit better and keeps it in line. I'm currently working my way through. I started at the end of last year with the Gunslinger and have moved on through Drawing of the Three to the Wastelands. I'm about to start Wizard of Glass, but I'm trying to get some of the tie-in in between Stephen King books in between. If you know anything about the Dark Tower, you know that a lot of other Stephen King books tie into his magnum opus, as some call it, series. I really recommend this series for really anyone, but the Gunslinger is the place to start. Obviously, it's number one. I did actually have to keep a dictionary by the side of my bed when I was reading this because, especially in the first half, there's a lot of words that I didn't know. It's very poetically written, but if you do any other research on the Dark Tower, you'll find out that is unlike the rest of the books, which are written in much more of a modern tone. So yeah, obviously I have to recommend the first one. It's only short, give it a go. Moving on to this shelf, I really like this shelf. This is the last shelf of my Stephen King. So this is really special to me. This was my grandfather's, who passed it down to my mum, who passed it down to me. It is a full Beatles collection on cassette tape. I have never actually played one of these albums, as you know, I don't have any means to. I don't have a tape deck. But yeah, I can see I have all the albums. I don't know what condition they're in. I hope that it's a good condition. I like to keep it on my shelf because I think it looks nice with the cover, even though it is decaying a bit. So I'm gonna have to find a way to take care of this a bit better. I'm not sure how to. Now moving on to the actual shelf, I recently used the pieces from a Lego set that I had. I used a website called Rebrickable to find a really nice design. I was looking for something to slip in between books on my bookshelf, so something with flat edges. I really like it as like a partition because the end of my Stephen King books and then the start of the rest of my books. Out of this shelf, Pet Sematary is actually the best place to start. It's actually the one I started with, so I say this one and then The Shining are the best places to start. It is, Stephen King's called it his scariest book, but it's also one of the best. I found this, a copy of the Bachman books, which was back when it was Stephen King's Alias in the 80s, and one of the Bachman books was actually banned from print by Stephen King because this one here, Rage, and is really hard to find because it's about a school shooter, and several school shooters were found with this in their locker. So Stephen King pulled the book from print, and so now it is really rare to find a copy, and I think it's a really good find. So yeah, it's a really nice edition I like. Now I want to move on to just these books here. This is my favourite series. This book, look at how tattered it is because it was my mum's and it's been read so many times by her and by me. This is another sci-fi comedy book, as I mentioned before. It's just so original and funny, and the characters have so much personality that you just want to keep reading about them. Now moving down to the last layer of shelves on this bookcase. Ow! Moving down to this last layer. Moving down to this... Dogs barking a lot. Are you done? Okay. Moving down to the last layer of shelves. We've moved out of my 4 shelves of Stephen King. Don't worry, there's more to come. I have another book from a YouTuber I really like. I haven't read it because it's not really my demographic. I bought it because I wanted to support the YouTuber, Austin McConnell. Now for those of you who know anything about me, one of my main passions in life is the circus, and I met the author of this book at a writing workshop, and when I found out she had written a book about circus and the main character's name was Gus, I bought a copy. It's signed. I'm probably too old to enjoy it on a reread now, but yeah, it was a really awesome, special book to me. I got through it really quickly. I saw Holden Shepherd for a writer's talk for his new book, The Brink. He's actually from my own town, and it was such a compelling read. I got through it in a couple of days. The characters, they're like around my age, and they're so relatable. I felt really seen by this book. So yeah, I really recommend this book if you live in Australia or WA. It's set in WA and you want something really enjoyable. This final shelf here, I like to keep this. I think it's just really neat and it fits well. On this shelf, I have another book out on loan here, so just ignore the gap. Out of this shelf, the recommendation is super easy. The Book Thief is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, books of all time. I have read it 2 or 3 times. It is just beautifully written. I remember passages from this book off by heart because of how memorable and lovely they are, and it's just a book that'll make you cry and it'll make you laugh. Read The Book Thief. I like to keep all of my non-fiction books right here because I think they look good. I have not read this. I want to read this. I have read this biography. This is what I would recommend off this shelf. It's a biography about the guy, it's an autobiography, sorry, by the guy who was a film editor in Hollywood, and he edited Star Wars, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Carrie, Mission Impossible, and it was just a really interesting read with some interesting stories and backstory about famous people in Hollywood like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. I have 2 non-fiction Beatles books. This one is it's called A Hard Day's Right. Oh my god, puns. And it goes through every Beatles song and explains the backstory behind it. This is Paul McCartney's autobiography, I guess. Lyrics A to Z. I got the hardcover edition. It was $120. It was a good investment. I pick this up every now and again. It goes through a lot of songs Paul McCartney has written, not all of them, sadly, but about 300 or so of them. And from Paul's perspective, explains the story behind the songs. I also have a Stephen King non-fiction book. That's basically the same as this one. I like having this petition here because, this Lego set here, because like the apartment building, it's just a nice separator. As we go back to more Stephen King, because I couldn't fit them down there, so I put them up here. So we have my hardcover. Out of these, I would recommend Gerald's Game. Honestly, after reading it, I couldn't get to sleep for a solid 4 days or so. So yeah, definitely recommend Gerald's Game. Very scary. I'm always changing this shelf around, but this is the iteration that I really like. Now, this hardcover Harry Potter set, I had a paperback set, and those were the ones that I read in year 3 or whenever I read the series, but I just thought these with the gold stars were so nice that I wanted to have them on my shelf, so I do just have them now. Don't support that person. This is my favorite decoration on my shelf. It is the Beatles Lego art set. I also have the Batmobile here, a little nod to Batman. Then we have these final fiction books here that I did not have room for on that shelf, but I think fit nicely up here. Hive and Rogue books are the ones that I recommend off this shelf. I sped through both of these books in about 4 days, I think, 4 or 5 days. Both of them are signed by the author. I actually did an interview with her. You can go and watch that up there. I have the Hunger Games books. Everyone knows the Hunger Games books. And the complete set of How to Train Your Dragon books, complete with this little dragon figure I got at a shop in Fremantle. And I think it's just awesome. I've had it for a long time. And recently when I got this set, I thought, perfect. Stick it on there. So that, in a nutshell, is all of my bookshelves, decorations, etc. Thank you so much for watching. I've spent a long time building up my collection and I'm really happy with it at the moment. Of course I won't be in a week. I'm planning on doing another video talking about my collection, so if you want to see that, like and subscribe, so stay tuned. Okay, thanks, bye.